Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to With Jewish Youth. Well, all I can tell you is that by the mail that has been coming in over the weekend and by the comments that I've been hearing out in the street from last week's show with Dr. Mindel, I can tell you that in our business we would consider that a real success. And of course, there's good reason for it, because there aren't many people like Dr. Mindel around. There aren't enough, I should say. Kanahara, gifted and talented, and a man who has really made a great contribution to the world, to the Jewish world at large. I think you will be interested to know that the publications of Dr. Mindel have been printed in millions of volumes, and that is true. In millions of volumes over the course of the 34 years or 33 years that Dr. Mindel has been writing for the Merkaz Yonah Chinuch and for Kahat Publication Society. And these are very, very important works and contributory works that have found their spot in the hearts of young and old alike. Tonight I have asked Dr. Mindel to be my guest again, and I hope to use him many more times after this. He's a good fellow, thank God, and he accepts my invitations when I sit on him a little bit. But I must also say that he is a very busy man. He's continuously at work, and it's difficult to take advantage of people who I know are doing something very, very worthwhile, even during the time that I'm not bothering them. But Dr. Mindel, welcome once again, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be with us tonight. I'm grateful to you, and I know that my audience is too. I would like to, with your kind permission, discuss one of your latest works called My Prayer. And this is a work that you have produced on the Siddur. Actually, the full translation is, or the full title is, As for Me, My Prayer. Now, this is an actually bestseller. I know that in the same year, they have reprinted it twice, and there's another fourth edition coming out, and the popularity continues to grow, and orders and requests are coming in from all part of the world, from what I've been told from the office, and it's still very strongly in demand. I also have heard that people began to give this as a gift when they come to visit their friends. They also are using this for bar mitzvah gifts and for wedding gifts. And it's sort of a contribution to the Jewish home which has no duplication. And so I think we ought to tell our audience something about this. First, I'd like to ask you a personal question. Tell me, Dr. Mindel, do you agree that this is really one of the best works that you have ever turned out?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your kind introduction, Rabbi Hecht. I want to say that since this is my third appearance on your program, or is it fourth?
Fourth.
Oh, well, then I should have said Blue Leather already on my last appearance. 3 times, when you do something 3 times, you have to say Blue Leather. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to share the microphone with you and with such a wonderful audience, especially as the subjects that you discuss are really very timely, very important, very significant. And so I have certainly made it my business to tear myself away from whatever I was doing to respond to your call, so to speak, and your invitation, which I really appreciate. Now, the question, is this really my best work? It's hard to say. When you deal with a number of works in the same field, you can evaluate them accordingly and say which is better and which is not. My works have been, as you had occasion to mention on another program, I have written in a number of fields, and therefore it's hard to compare a book that's published in one field with a book that's published in another field. But from the response, I'm very gratified. I wouldn't say that it is such a marvelous book, judging by its response. It is a good book, I suppose, but we must also remember that it probably fills an urgent need, and therefore this is why one of the reasons, at least, why it has been so popular. I've been told also that it's been very lucidly and very clearly handled and treated, and that people found it both profound and illuminating, and at the same time very interesting and very readable.
Dr. Mindel, you know as well as I do that there have been many translations to the Siddur. This is not the first, and it won't be the last, perhaps. Throughout the generations, there have come down many, many different interpretations and translations to prayers, and I'm sure that you are well aware of this. Now, there's something that's, I think that's very important. I actually think that our audience ought to know what makes your book, My Prayer, different from all the other translations to the Siddur that have been turned out up to now. I think that it's also important to let our people know that this is about 400 pages, this book, and this is only the first of a series that's going to be done by you, and the volume 2 is already being written by you in its early stages, of course, to carry on from where you have ended in this volume. I think you ought to tell us what makes it different, and what do you expect to deal with in your next volume?
Rabbi Hecht, you come with a few questions at a time, and it's difficult to keep track. Let me first of all make one correction. This is not a translation of the Siddur. This is a commentary on the Siddur. It is a book that attempts to explain our prayers. It has an introduction, quite a lengthy introduction on the meaning of prayer, why do we pray, and so forth, and the origin of the prayers. But mainly it is, as I said, a commentary on the various prayers and not a translation. As a matter of fact, maybe someday we are going to publish also a translation, a direct translation of the Siddur, but this is a commentary on each and every prayer that appears in the Siddur. This volume deals with the daily prayers, that is the 3 daily prayers, Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. It also has a chapter on grace after meals, Birkas Hamazon, and Kriyas Shema She'al Hamito, that is the prayer before retiring for the night. In other words, it covers the prayers for the day, so-called daily prayers. Now, of course, the next volume will deal with the prayers for Rosh Chodesh, for Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, and eventually we hope to cover also the prayers for the various festivals. Insofar where there is a short translation of certain passages, it is only where I differ in my translation from standard translations, and there is not too much of it. It would still be necessary to refer to the one who does not know Hebrew, does not understand the prayers from the original Hebrew. He will still have to use a translation if he wants to know the literal verbal translation of the prayers. But this, as I say, is a commentary on the prayer book. Now, you asked me what made me write this book. Why did I spend so much time on this book, which of course required a great deal of time? I will tell you why, because as you know, prayer is one of the pillars of Judaism. Our sages of Pirkei Avos tell us al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omeid al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gmilus chasadim, that the world exists, both the world at large and each individual world, every human being, every Jew, in other words, rests on 3 pillars: Torah and prayer and acts of loving kindness. It is interesting to note that they mention these three things, although a little later we found another similar saying, on three things the world rests, on truth, justice, and peace. Now, it would have been logical to lump them together and say that the world rests on 6 pillars, and then certainly it would be more solid than resting on 3. But there is a very important message here to tell us that just as a tripod, that's a table that rests on 3 legs, if you take one away, it must fall. So it is with these 3 things, Torah, Avodah, Gemilas, Chasadim. All 3 are equally necessary and indispensable. Because, we have different kinds of Jews, all gesund sein. Some concentrate on Torah, some concentrate on prayer, and some think they're very good Jews merely by giving tzedakah and acts of loving kindness, and the rest they are Jews at heart. Now, our sages wanted to impress upon us that there is no such thing. Judaism rests on all 3. It's only a question of emphasis and degree. Somebody is a scholar if he's a yeshiva boy, if he's a Talmid Chacham, he's got the time and the mind to study Torah, he naturally would be expected to study more Torah. One who is more of a devotional person, and he would pray longer and spend more time on prayer. And Balabos, who is blessed with riches, is a businessman, who is very occupied otherwise, so he has to still study Torah morning and night, and has to say his prayers, but his main function is in the area of philanthropy. But all 3 are necessary, and one cannot be a full Jew, a wholesome Jew, unless he embraces all these 3 together. So now, when I came to the States, as a matter of fact, even before, it was always my feeling that this Amud HaAvodah, this pillar of prayer, which incidentally is put in the center, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, it is really central. By virtue of its importance, it is central to Jewish life, to Judaism. And you'll ask me why so? Because we know what the situation is, and we know that very few people, very few Balabatim have the time and the head, perhaps, to concentrate on Torah very much. And not everybody is in a position to be a philanthropist. But everybody prays. I mean, a Jew that is a Jew prays. Everybody prays. Whether he prays at home or he prays in the synagogue. Certainly you find Shabbos and Yom Tov, people go to shul and they pray. And even in extreme cases, they found a need to come to shul. So everybody prays, and if we want to strengthen Judaism, I think this would be the best place to start with, to strengthen the idea of prayer, both in the shul, for instance. I feel that there is a great deal of to be desired as far as the decorum is concerned in the shul. There's a great deal that could be improved if rabbis would pay more attention to the fact that Jews come to shul on Shabbos for spiritual elevation and not for a social gathering and so forth. And if this is the opportunity when Judaism could be really put across to them and so forth. So I felt that in order to strengthen this Amud HaAvodah, which I believe is the central pillar of Judaism, especially in the present day and age. There was a time when Torah was almost exclusive. There's little prayer at the time, and most people were studying Torah. But nowadays, especially in the light of what we know from Chabad and Chassidus, the importance of prayer and the significance of it, So it is very, very important, and for this reason I felt that perhaps I could make a little contribution in this area. And this is what set me out to try to explain the deeper meaning of prayer, so that people would really, they have to know what the Siddur is and what the prayer book is. Now, you see, the one weakness, I might say, the weak spot about prayer is the fact that it is repetitious. You know, we say our prayers 3 times a day, and some of these prayers are repeated every time. We become very familiar. Those who daven become very familiar with the prayers, with the prayer. And you can start the prayer and finish it before you know it, and think about something else. You know, it's a curious thing. I know I drive into town by car. I live in Long Beach. I travel the same road every time, of course, there and back. So I get into the car sometimes, and I begin to think about some idea. If I have to give a talk, you know. This is the time when I do a great deal of thinking. That's when I drive the car. I drive for nearly an hour. So suddenly I find myself at 770 Eastern Parkway, and I don't remember for a moment having stopped for any red lights, having made any turn, because the road is so familiar. And this is what happens also with prayer. It's such a familiar road that people might go through the prayer without stopping for a moment to think what they're saying, to whom they're davening, and so forth. And this is the one of the weaknesses that have to be corrected. And I feel that if people would concentrate more on the meaning of prayer, then they will start to think less about other things while they are praying, and really be able to concentrate on what they're saying and get the benefit of it, and the inspiration that it has.
Dr. Mindel, I must say you hit the spot. You really touched the nerve, and the sensitive nerve, because what you say is so very, very true. And if your book has opened up the eyes and the minds and the hearts of the people who are now praying, and taught them how to pray and understand the significance of prayer, I think we have been very, very lucky to have you in this generation to make this great contribution. Let me ask you something off the record, you know, from this Tachla standpoint. For a man who has written so many different books and so many different volumes and so on, you must be a very rich man. I mean, just after tell, but I'm trying to, you know, if you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I can just imagine from all the royalties you must be getting in, you must be an extremely wealthy man, and I haven't hit you up for a good contribution yet.
I must confess I'm not as good a businessman, perhaps, as a writer. At any rate, I have donated all my royalties, all my copyrights, to the organization, to Lubavitch, in other words. So I'm afraid I am not, I didn't grow very rich on the royalties. But my real remuneration, my real reward is the knowledge that it is doing something good. I mean, the books are well received and they're doing something good. And if I get a letter of praise, not that I'm looking for praise, of course, but when somebody writes to me or tells me how much he enjoyed reading any of my works and so forth, this is Zes-Chari Mikol Amoli. I'm sure this is worth a great deal more than the royalties could have brought in.
Well, so we really have a philanthropist here, not only a writer. And I'm sure that the Rabbi Shalom won't shortchange you, and he'll pay it back to you in many, many more ways than perhaps than what a royalty could bring after selling a book. But, you know, I would like to ask you, Dr. Mindel, who uses, from what you've known, I mean, there are so many thousands of these books that have been sold already, and they're out in all parts of the world. Besides the fact that I made mention in what areas, but who are actually using these books? Are they on the college campus? Are they in adult study groups and so on? Or is it just in the private homes?
I must say that insofar as distribution is concerned, we're a little behind the times. We do not have much money for advertising. In fact, we hardly ever advertise. And it's only really by word of mouth that the knowledge of a new publication spreads. And just people tell each other about it. And this is, I must say, unfortunately, the only way that our publication gets known. There are times when some of the volunteer yeshiva boys go out, during the summer to do their work, and they take with them some of the publications, introduce them to different communities, rabbis, educators, and so forth. This is the type of book that certainly can be used, as I said before, by young and old, at home, in the school. Anyone who is interested to know what the prayer is all about will find it very useful.
Dr. Mindel, the clock, you should know this, since this is your fourth appearance on my show with Jewish Youth. You know already that there's one thing that we can't keep back, and that is the clock. And we don't have too much time left. But I think that it would be very, very interesting and helpful if you would give us sort of an example. Tell us take any part of the Siddur that you've dealt with, and perhaps you could give us some kind of an idea of how you interpreted something which sort of brought new meaning and new dimension to that certain prayer which we are so used to saying, as you very beautifully told us before. It's become part of ourselves, and there's no new excitement each time we say it because of the fact that we don't stop really to consider what we're saying. Perhaps you could, I know I should have given you more advance notice for this, but as the author, I'm sure you could think of something very quickly and offer it to our listening audience.
I would like to say this, Rabbi Hecht, that there is not a real good and thorough understanding, generally speaking, what the Siddur is. It is not just a compilation of prayers in the sense of requests, asking God to give us our daily bread and give us health and nachas and all the good things in life. This is, of course, also part of it, but by no means the most important part of it, because if this were so, perhaps prayer would be unnecessary altogether. Who knows better than God what is really good for us and what we really need? So we shouldn't really have to come to God and ask Him what we want. As a matter of fact, as you know, when we wish each other something, the fulfillment of your heart desires, we always say L'tova, for good. And for good, in the sense, the way God knows what is truly good, because some people may have hard desires which may not necessarily be good for them, either physically or spiritually or both. So we always say L'tova, because God really knows what is good for us. And were this the only part of prayer, we should not have to really pray at all. This is one of the subjects, of course, I discuss in the commentary. We must know that the prayer book is a sort of a digest, you might say, of the whole of Judaism in a nutshell. It contains sections of the whole sacred literature, beginning with the Torah itself, Chumash, and the Nevi'im and Ksuvim, Tanakh, in other words, the Talmud, Mishnah, Medrash, and even Kabbalah, the Zohar, and so forth. So the prayer book is not just a prayer book as we say in the English translation, because tefillah, prayer, does not really mean prayer in the sense of request or the sense of asking or begging. I don't think we have much time to discuss this at greater length. But the prayer book really can be understood on different levels. There is, first of all, the plain biur hamilos, to know simply what it means, to understand what we are saying. And there is also the deeper aspect of what we are saying. which is really true of every mitzvah that we do. To pray is a mitzvah like other mitzvahs. So when we put on tefillin, we know there is the mechanics of the thing, and there's a bracha and so forth. But there are very profound ideas and thoughts and lessons connected with it. This is what we usually understand by the word kavanah, to know what is real, all the kavanahs connected with every mitzvah. And so it is with prayer especially. And in this case, as you know, our Rabbi said that tefillah without kavanah is like a body without a neshama. You have to have the body, of course, but the essential, the most important part is that which is not visible on the surface, the neshama itself. Now, since this is so, then what I have attempted is to bring out especially the inner aspects of the prayer. And to cite a small example, since you asked me to cite one. Now let's take the first prayer of the Siddur, Modeh Ani Lefanecha, that we begin teaching our children as soon as they can speak. I give thanks unto Thee, O God, King of the universe, who has returned my Shechazat Bi Nishmoti Bechemlo Rabo Emunasecho. Everybody knows this prayer. And we started off with Modeh Ani Lefanecho Melech Chai V'Kayam. And when we go to bed, one of the last prayers is Hashkivenu Avinu L'Shalom. I'm citing now Nusach Hari. Hashkivenu Avinu L'Shalom V'Hamidenu Malkeinu L'Chayim Tovim L'Shalom. Put us to rest, to sleep, O our Father. We ask God to allow us to fall asleep peacefully, but we address Him as our Father. V'Ha'amidenu Malkeinu, and make us rise, O our King. Now in the morning, Modeh Ani Lefanecha, we start Melech. In the evening, we finish off with the idea of Avinu, our Father. And we know Avinu Malkeinu is a term that occurs very often in our prayer, our Father and our King. So we have to understand what is the significance of Avinu and what is the significance of Malkeinu. And this is, of course, explained at great length in the Chabad literature, that there are two ways of understanding God, two kinds of relationships. One is that the father-son relationship, and then there is the Melech Eved, the relationship between king and his servant. The first is one that involves, in other words, ahavo, especially, and the other involves yiro. In other words, the first is a relationship based primarily on love, and the other on reverence. Now, this is a subject, of course, that requires a lengthier explanation, but I see that you are giving me the sign that I must finish right here.
Dr. Mindel, time is up. No commercial tonight because of the lateness of the hour. Thank you so much for being our guest, ladies and gentlemen. Until tomorrow night at the same time, thank you for being with us with Jewish Youth. And until tomorrow, God bless you all.